War is waged by each ruling group against its own subjects. War has been on my mind recently. There's the genocide in Gaza, almost 1 year old now. The European Union's Defense Commissioner, Andrius Kubilius, just said that the EU should prepare for a hot war with Russia in the next 6 to 8 years. Also, Admiral Lisa Franchetti, U.S. Chief of Naval Operations, just unveiled plans for war with China by 2027. Big thanks to Caitlin Johnstone for her Substack post on the subject. So it goes. The U.S. war machine relentlessly cranks on. But before we all succumb to either a massive atomic blast or the ensuing nuclear winter, I would like to share a passage from George Orwell's 1984, recently suggested by a commenter. I found it quite profound. This version is lightly edited for time. Please visit my Substack for the full text. 1984, Book 2, Chapter 9. The primary aim of modern warfare is to use up the products of the machine without raising the general standard of living. Ever since the end of the 19th century, the problem of what to do with the surplus of consumption goods has been latent in industrial society. From the moment when the machine first made its appearance, it was clear to all thinking people that the need for human drudgery, and therefore, to a great extent, for human inequality, had disappeared. If the machine were used deliberately for that end, hunger, overwork, dirt, illiteracy, and disease could be eliminated within a few generations. But it was also clear that an all-around increase in wealth threatened the destruction, indeed, in some sense, was the destruction of a hierarchical society. For if leisure and security were enjoyed by all alike, the great mass of human beings who were normally stupefied by poverty would become literate and would learn to think for themselves. And when once they had done this, they would sooner or later realize that the privileged minority had no function, and they would sweep it away. In the long run, a hierarchical society was only possible on a basis of poverty and ignorance. The problem was how to keep the wheels of industry turning without increasing the real wealth of the world. Goods must be produced, but they must not be distributed. And in practice, the only way of achieving this was by continuous warfare. The essential act of war is destruction, not necessarily of human lives, but of the products of human labor. War is a way of shattering to pieces, or pouring into the stratosphere, or sinking in the depths of the sea, materials which might otherwise be used to make the masses too comfortable, and hence, in the long run, too intelligent. Even when weapons of war are not actually destroyed, their manufacture is still a convenient way of expending labor power without producing anything that can be consumed. A floating fortress, for example, has locked up in it the labor that would build several hundred cargo ships. Ultimately, it is scrapped as obsolete, never having brought any material benefit to anybody. And with further enormous labors, another floating fortress is built. In principle, the war effort is always so planned as to eat up any surplus that might exist after meeting the bare needs of the population. In practice, the needs of the population are almost always underestimated, with the result that there's a chronic shortage of half the necessities of life. But this is looked on as an advantage. It is deliberate policy to keep even the favored groups somewhere near the brink of hardship, because a general state of scarcity increases the importance of small privileges and thus magnifies the distinction between one group and another. And at the same time, the consciousness of being at war and therefore in danger makes the handing over of all power to a small caste seem natural. War is waged by each ruling group against its own subjects. And the object of the war is not to make or prevent conquests of territory, but to keep the structure of society intact. I still think war is a racket. Please check that playlist out, as well as my continuing series on the war in Vietnam for more anti-war material. Let's make them pay.